Hello everyone, welcome back. The major scale, such a simple element of our musical adventures, and yet it's very much unexplored, you'll be surprised to hear, by many guitar players and musicians in general. So today I'm going to give you a quick tip on how you can really get to the bottom of the major scale and really mine it for everything it has to offer, because it's a very rich harmonically and melodically environment to get beautiful melodies, great chord progression. So it's all there, and sometimes it's just hard to realize it's at our fingertips because we're so used to seeing as the most basic scale and kind of forget about good old major scale. So follow me for a little tip on how to get the most out of it. The way I look at most things in music is about energy levels. You have potential energy and then possible resolutions, or unresolved energy, and then you kind of store it up for release later on. So it's very obvious on the major scale, and there's two ways you can listen to it. The first one is the most basic one. You just listen to the notes of the scale. And if you play the whole scale, in this case C major, you can hear a kind of a progression to take you from this note here all the way up to the C again. It's as if the scale is kind of propelling you forward, right? So that's a macro thing, right? You have this big conspiracy to get you from C to the next C, and it works. The other thing you can do is go a bit deeper and look at the single notes. And so you realize that three of these notes of the C major scale, but really of any major scale, tend to be restful. In this case would be the root, third, and fifth. So C, E, and G. They are restful notes. They're notes where you can end a phrase, resolve a phrase, and so on. And let's look at all the notes one by one, and you'll see what I mean. If I go simply from C to D, this D doesn't feel like it's arrived, right? It wants you to return to C. That's what it wants to do. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's what it asks for. If I go up to E, so three notes, we could stop here, right? You hear that even that D is kind of happy to be at E now, so it's at rest. If we keep going to F, this note is still waiting for something, and what it's waiting for most is going back to E. Because it's a half step, it's very close to it, and it's a resting note. We go up to the fifth note, G. Again, it can stop here, it's kind of resolved, and it's also a resolution of the F itself. Okay, it's kind of going home now. We go up to A. This A says, hey, either bring me up to C or bring me back down to G. So between the B and the G, it would pick the G because the G is a resting note. And then finally the B, of course, wants to go up to C. So out of the seven notes, we have the root, third, and fifth, C, E, and G. They're at a restful state. And then the other ones, all of them want to go down to the previous notes. So D wants to go to C, F wants to go to E, A wants to go to G, but the B is the only one that wants to go up to the root again. So that's the first secret of the major scale, or at least getting the most out of it, and this will work with any scale in the world actually. But there's one more thing we can do, because when we play the notes by themselves, they're a bit of in a vacuum, so it's harder to gauge, the amount of tension, release, potential energy they have. So the great way to do this is to actually play over a triad or a major chord, in this case C major. So I'm gonna freeze a C major chord with a bit of reverb, and then we're gonna listen to every single note. And you'll notice two things. First of all, it will be very apparent how each of these notes want to go back to the certain note we discussed. And the other thing is that it will, if you take your time, these notes will start sounding proper. Even if they are full of energy, you will be able to start using them as the actual basis for your melody. So you're not always, every time you hit a D, you're trying to resolve it to C and E, but indeed you are figuring out, okay, how can I make the D part of the chord, basically, and that's kind of actually where all these other big chords come from, the 9th and the 11th and the 6th. It's a way of saying, you know what, you don't have to always start on the root 3rd and 5th. But anyway, let's get to it. Let's play a very basic chord, and then on top of it, we'll listen to every single note of the scale. Okay, so here I have my C major chord, and on top of that, we'll play the whole scale. Check out how obvious it becomes, the tendencies, the strength, the weakness, the potential energy of each note, all right? So we have C over C, of course, very restful, kind of feels like home. D to me is very ambiguous. It could go either way. It's a very beautiful sound. Then E, of course, becomes very major, bright, happy, right? This is just my interpretation, of course. We have F, which is kind of weird sounding. Not the best sounding note unless you know how to use it and manage it. G, again, very bright, very happy. Right? Then we have A, which is a beautiful sound. To me, sounds hopeful in a way. We have the B, of course, that wants to resolve. A bit mysterious, yeah, and then C again. So it's all, of course, very subjective, but that's the way I feel about these notes. And you should practice this with major in different keys, and you should certainly practice it with all kind of scales you want to learn. And finally, another way you can really get deep with major scales is learning different chords. So major 9s, the major 13, you should certainly your major 7th, then go into the minor chords, get to the extensions. That really helps out. It's kind of basically the same thing I'm doing here, but you do it all yourself without any loops or frozen reverbs. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it would be very useful for you, and please do subscribe. We're reaching 10,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and every one of those subscriptions counts. So thanks again, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.